It's another episode of Beachside Banter with B. I'm here today with Kirsten Rudberg. Hopefully I said that right. I'm real bad at pronouncing names. Everybody knows that. We are here to talk about all sorts of things. Kirsten has had an amazing journey, and I am so excited that I'm able to actually pick her brain, and we can kind of share some of that along with you all. So, Kirsten, go ahead, take it away, introduce yourself, let everybody know what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. It's actually Kirsten, and that's totally
Kirsten.
fine.
So sorry.
I'm
real bad at names.
Yeah, I feel like when my parents named me that, they set everyone up in the world for failure because there is Kirsten, Kristen, Christine, Christy. I mean, you name it. It's like the options are out there. So it's my fault. Just let you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
anyways, Kirsten's here, y'all, and we're real excited to have her here.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. And so just a little bit about me. I went to seminary. I have my Master's of Divinity. I went to a Methodist seminary, but I am a religious, or I would say I'm a panentheist, which means that I believe that everything is sacred, everything has consciousness, everything is alive around me, and that everything deserves respect and consideration when we're making big decisions in this world. I'm an artist. I have my own podcast, Byte Sized Blessings.
Yes.
Out of the pandemic, I have just published my third book. I'm rewriting the Peter Rabbit book series, but it's more aggressive and dark. It's darker than the original. It deals with things that are going on in this world that I feel that are social justice issues. I have an animated series on YouTube about two crows who sit on a line and observe humanity, and they comment on them. I have written scripts. I have screenplays. I have a lot going on.
Yes.
I
told you all, it's a fantastic journey she's gone on so far, and it's amazing. Okay, so how did your Islamic call to prayer? How did that kind of that experience impact your sense of embracing, belonging, and all of that sort of thing? Let's kind of start there at the top, because I know you have a little bit of a different perspective on than some people would. So I'd love to kind of dive into that first.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I grew up overseas. First few years were in Guyana, South America, and then I was in Lahore, Pakistan for 4 years. And as a kid, you kind of just think this is what normal life is, that you get to play with kids from all over the world, that who cares about what you wear, what religion you are, what color your skin is. Nobody cared about that. We just wanted to go out, have fun, play soccer, and I was in an Islamic country. And honestly, the day you were awoken with the Islamic call to prayer, and so it's like this singing out over the land, and talk about being, I don't know, it's a better alarm clock than what I've got on my iPhone right now. And so it was just incredible beauty as a kid. Not only to go to a school that was kind of welcoming and all-encompassing, but to grow up in such a rich country with the architecture, with the food, and also, my parents took me to the Taj Mahal. We went to Kashmir. Awesome. We went to Bangladesh. We went to all these different places. So I spent a lot of my childhood just traveling all over the world. And not only that, but to countries that people normally don't go to. So this is what my vision of what life was like. I thought, oh, this is cool. I can hang with this. And then we go back to the States. And all I have to say is that it was a rude awakening. And they plopped me down in the middle of Illinois. Everyone was white. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but coming from kind of a milieu where everything was very diverse and incredible and rich and just this varied tapestry, to what I wore to school was of paramount importance. Jordache and Izod were in. What I brought in my lunchbox was judged. Every single thing. It was like, what does your hair look like? What do you look like? Everything was just picked apart, and it broke my heart. And when I went to seminary, I realized that was the first big experience that broke my child's heart, to go from this expansive existence to being locked down and judged for everything that I did. And so, I did not manage it well. I could not adjust. It was just really difficult. So I did do fourth grade again. I did fourth grade twice. I couldn't process what was going on. It was really, really challenging for me. I was overwhelmed, frankly, as a child. I was just overwhelmed. But, I can never thank my parents enough for that childhood of growing up overseas, because it has changed everything about my life. And it is part of the reason I love to meet everyone. It's part of the reason I believe in everyone until I learn otherwise. It's part of the reason I do my podcast. I want to get to know people, bring them together. And, as I am a panentheist, I kind of have an open view of the world, and I feel like I'm pretty accepting. My podcast is a platform for everyone under the sun. I've had LGBTQ clergy. I have had a-religious people. I've had atheists. I've had religious people. It's this platform for everyone to come on, share a story, and for my listeners to get to know people they might not meet in their normal way of life. And so then they can maybe it will encourage empathy or commiseration or connection. And maybe they'll feel less threatened by this person, whoever they are, wherever they are in the world. And so that is, I think, going to be my life's work is encouraging people to get to know the stranger, welcome them in, and understand that really at our hearts, we're all the same.
That's amazing. So you and I had the exact opposite childhood. So I grew up in Missouri, which is, basically the same thing as what you described in Illinois. I was in a small, tiny town. I had all white people around me. Again, nothing wrong with that. We had, I think, like 2 Black African-American kids in our class. So we didn't really have any kind of culture whatsoever. It was, your basic, I don't want to say hillbilly culture, but that's kind of what it was, So, but kind of being able to step outside of the box and going out and exploring some just little bitty tiny pieces of the world has kind of been what has opened my eyes up, and to realize that there are so many things and so many people out there and so many different cultures and ways of life, and all of that is kind of what has brought this whole sector together. The reason why I'm, my passion behind beach, whatever, life, love, travel, all that stuff. I really think that, and I love your mindset and the way that you're thinking about it, how everybody has importance. Every single piece fits together like this beautiful puzzle. I feel like it's a really great way of looking at it. And I think it's amazing that like we kind of both came together with the same mindset as adults, even though we had exact opposite childhood. So that's really cool. I like to hear that. What's one of the most common misconceptions that people have about third culture kids, and like how would you address that? I know it's bad.
No, I was just thinking to myself, I didn't know I was a third culture kid till I did seminary, and one of my professors said, "Do you know you're a third culture kid?" And I was like, what is that? So then
I get that.
Honestly, I have spent, and this is a very common, I know you asked about other people, but I think it's really common for third culture kids to feel like they can go into any sort of milieu and fit and mix in because they've learned to adjust and adapt and pivot because they've been moved from place to place to place.
Right.
The other thing, so like as far as what other people, and I could be, again, I'm a sensitive person. I could be overthinking this, but my perception when I was a child was that people thought I was weird. And I think that is a common thing because, when you're a kid and you see so much of the world and then you come into places that are kind of monocultural, it shaped me and changed me in ways where I just behaved differently than everyone else and also viewed the world differently. So I didn't fit in.
And that's
fine, right? A lot of kids don't fit in. And there are worse things happening in this world. But as a kid, it's really attenuated and you kind of understand very deeply, oh my goodness, I don't fit in. And there's something that's not, I'm like, there's a square hole there and I'm a triangle and I don't know what's happening.
Right. I get that.
Yeah, and I don't know how to make it fit. It's hard and it's challenging and it makes you feel really lonely as a kid. I mean, I can tell you a funny story about going into seminary.
I love funny stories.
So when I went into seminary, the head of kind of every single student coming in had to take an 800, question, all these personality tests to see if we were in the right program. And so the gentleman who was a pastor, but he was also a psychoanalyst, he ran this thing. he came back to me and he said, okay, first you're an artist, which I had no idea that I was an artist, but it kind of gave me permission to do everything I'm doing now. And then second is science and technology, which makes sense because I read science magazines since I was a kid. But then he said, you have to know you're on the wrong program. And I said, no. I mean, I argued with him and I said, I feel called to get a master's of divinity. But then he said, I need to tell you something really strange. He said, look at this graph. And it was 4 quadrants, this square split up into 4 quadrants. And each quadrant represented personality thing. And he said, I've never, ever, in all the years that I've done this, had this result. It is the strangest, most bizarre thing I've ever seen. He said, normally I just watch the quadrant and there's this little ball that goes around as all the answers are being tabulated and it usually stays in one and maybe moves to another. He said, yours just went around and around and around and then it settled in the circle in the center. And he said, I've never had an answer like that from this machine. And he said, you either have no idea who you are or you can be whoever you want at any moment in time. And I thought, my God, I'm older now. I hope I know who I am, sort of. But, I mean, that's what growing up as a third culture kid did for me. It absolutely made me into a chameleon so that I could fit whatever situation that came along.
Totally well-rounded. Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome, though. I feel like that's a really cool story, and it's shaped you into this cool human being. So I love that. That's awesome. So I'm guessing your traveling has kind of brought you back to where you are now. How has that sort of influenced who you are as an adult?
Oh my goodness. I drive my family crazy. Okay. So I graduated from college, went to University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, worked for a corporation for a couple of years and went to this celebration at the corporation of people who had been there 5, 10, 15, 20, got sick to my stomach. And I was like, I got to get out of here because this cannot be my life. So I sold most of everything I owned, and a dear friend had moved to up near north of Seattle, and she's like, come live here. And I'd never been there, so I went to Bellingham, Washington, lived there for a couple of years. It got too small, moved to Portland. Lived in Portland 23 years. But every 3 years, I had to go somewhere else. So one summer, I went back to Chicago and spent 6 months there working downtown. A few years after that, I went to the Oregon coast and lived at the beach. A few years after that, I went to Florida and spent, I would say, 2 or 3 months being with my dear friend Linda, who was going through Parkinson's surgery. A few years after that, I went and I walked the Camino de Santiago. And so wherever I am, after a few years, I get restless. And I'm like, I gotta go. I've got to go. And if I don't go, I get cranky.
Yep. I only laugh because I'm the same way.
Oh, yeah. And then I get a little bitchy about where I'm living and I don't appreciate it and all this stuff.
Yep.
And so this kind of peripatetic lifestyle that I had as a child really has infiltrated me, you could say. And I want to see the world, but mostly I want to meet the people who are in it. I want to meet them. I want to have an encounter with the other. But I also want to see the world and revel in its beauty. And I'm not going to be able to do that if I'm staying in the same place. So yes,
Absolutely.
I'm a nomad a little bit.
I love it. So is that the nomad lifestyle? Like that's something that is like an ultimate goal for me. We're finally at that stage where we're empty nesters and we're repositioning ourselves towards Atlanta so that way we can fly in and out easily because I'm a Delta girl all the way through and through. So I know that sounds bad. People are like, you're moving just so that you could be by an airport. No, it's a hub, man. Come on. It's a hub. It makes things so much easier. It knocks out that whole, middle wing that I have to go through every single time I fly. So bringing that back, I feel like having that nomad lifestyle would be hard though, right? Because you don't really have a home. Is it one of those things that once you've done it for a while, it's easy, but getting into that lifestyle, is it difficult?
Well, let me tell you. So I, went to seminary and had a partner in Santa Fe for about 7 years. And then we split up after the pandemic. And between the time that I'd lived in Santa Fe, moved in with him and came back, the rents had doubled and I could no longer afford to live in Santa Fe. But my entire life was in Santa Fe, all my friends, my dear friends. And so I basically house sat for a year and a half. I just knew everyone under the sun. I got house sitting gigs. I was absolutely just out there house sitting. And that lifestyle is hard. I was basically living out of my car in 2 suitcases. all of my stuff is in storage. My entire life is in storage. It has been a challenging, sad, heartbreaking, I don't know, time of clarifying my spirit, let's say. And then last year I went in October and moved. I was supposed to move for 2 or 3 months to help take care of my mother. Dad and mom were having health issues. And then 2 weeks after I got home, my stepfather died unexpectedly. Then my mother got long COVID. And so it turned into a 6-month stint of caregiving for my mother.
Yeah.
And taking care of her. So
better now?
She is better now. Yes. So
good.
She kicked me out of the house. She's like, you can go in. She's like, I'm done with you. So, that left me at an impasse. Since I was like, where do I go? Because, Santa Fe is out of my, I can't afford it anymore. Hollywood's moving to Santa Fe, so nobody can afford anything anymore. So I went to the Oregon coast. I had a dear friend who was there. She said, I need house sitting for 5 weeks. Come here and work for 3 months. So I just did that. And then I have some opportunities in Santa Fe. So now I'm back in Santa Fe right now, house sitting again. It is difficult. It is exhausting. It is heartbreaking sometimes. It is stressful because you have to move and shake and try to figure things out. Thankfully, I have a lot of connections. I know a lot of people. A lot of people are like, you can sleep on my couch or what have you. And by the way, this isn't what I envisioned for myself when I thought, when I was 25 or whatever.
Right.
Where I thought I was going to be. But something about it feels right for this time of my life. And I don't know what that is. I think that it is encouraging adaptability, the ability to go with the flow. It's teaching me about going with the flow, believing that this universe wants to take care of me and has my back. And it's really teaching me to have faith that I'll be okay. And it's a necessary lesson that I've needed.
So I'll be honest with you, that is the first time that somebody I feel like has actually been truthful when they've answered that question about the nomad lifestyle. Most people will tell me, oh, it's amazing and I love it and it's so easy and blah. And I'm always just like, how? I don't know. So I think that's the first time that anybody's actually answered that question honestly and was like, hey, no, look, it's not as easy as you think it is.
No.
You're romanticizing it, but it's not as beautiful as you think it is. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And I think, it's also teaching me that I can be okay with less.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm invited to a wedding this weekend and all of my clothes are in storage or in Illinois with my mom. And I'm like, what am I going to wear? So I already messaged the bride and said, hey, I don't know what I'm wearing. We'll see what happens with that.
I'm sure you'll pull something together at the last minute. It'll be awesome.
And you know what? I'm at an age, okay, first of all, I have to tell you look like you're 25 or 30.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I appreciate that. Even with my bags underneath my eyes today, they're packing bags. Still, yeah, I appreciate that.
I've reached an age where I'm like, I don't really care what people think of me or how I show up. Like, I'm there and I'm doing the best that I can.
Yeah.
And everyone's just going to have to understand.
So you're definitely over 40 because that's what happens the second you turn 40.
I'm 53.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. See, I would have never have guessed that. I was thinking you were only maybe a couple years older than me, if at all. So look at that. We're high-fiving.
That's right.
Fancy pantsing over here. I love that. So how does your background as this third culture kid? I hate referring to you as that because to me, I feel like you're just more experienced than the rest of us is, and I love that. You've got more knowledge, more all of that. But how does that kind of influence the work and stuff that you're doing, like your writing and your animation and all of that?
Okay, so you have to know that there's just something in my spirit that is super all about the world and what's happening in it. And I hate this because becoming woke has become this kind of disgusting term. But for me, it means being aware of what's happening in the world and understanding it with compassion and intelligence. Just being able to be grounded enough to witness. Because sometimes the things that we witness in this world will break our hearts.
Absolutely.
But having the strength and bravery to be able to witness and then talk about it. That's what being woke means to me. And so I really, my work is all about, because look, when you grow up in a third world country and you see the level of poverty and suffering that the majority of people in Pakistan are dealing with, the majority of prejudice and hatred, as a child, that marks you forever. And you better believe that when you get back to the States in a more privileged country, those images and those experiences haunt you. And they make you, at least for me, forever wanting to bring people together, bring more people to the table, and solve issues. So, for example, I've gotten to the age, as we discussed, where I'm like getting progressively more done with nonsense. And I'm like, let's stop being done with this nonsense, because the first episode of my animated series, every episode's 2 minutes long, maybe a little over 2 minutes. My first episode was written in response to George Floyd, because I was like, I can't take this anymore. I was so angry and so filled with disappointment and rage for just the callousness that happened that day, the complete disregard for humanity. And then my Peter Rabbit series, it's, as I said, it's darker. First one is called A Tale of Two Rabbits. It's a rewrite of Peter Rabbit. It's all about, from Peter's point of view, the woods are being destroyed by McGregor to make room for condos and more farmland. And so where do those animals go? And the cover has a skinned rabbit on the front, because I want people to understand that this is not, we're not joking about this anymore.
This is what's actually going on in the world right now.
Yes.
This is the issues we're facing.
Exactly. Yeah. Second one is called The Nuts Guts, and it's a rewrite of Squirrel Nutkin. So Nutkin's going to be the trickster in the series. There's a little more levity in this one. The third one just got released. It's called Boom Chicka Meow Meow, and it's about a cat who runs a sweatshop, and it's a rewrite of The Tailor of Gloucester. And it's the mice are the ones that are making all the clothes for the humans in town. It's my comment on consumerism about there's never enough, that mouse bodies are disposable, just like human bodies working in all these factories. And it's going to be a 13-book series. It's going to get a little sci-fi at the end. Okay. The theme is the eternal return, Nietzsche's eternal return. Why do we keep making the same mistakes over and over? But they're confrontational, and they're meant to be. I hire all-female illustrators, and I design the books as well. I'm really proud of them, but as I said, they're dark and they're not for everybody. But they're sort of the same size. They're smaller, maybe 40 pages, but they pack a wallop. And, and then my script, Poncho in the Car with Noodles, for example, it's about a biracial man that opens a restaurant in Chinatown because he cannot afford to rent and open his own Mexican restaurant anywhere else. And it's a 14-episode series. Each episode's 10 minutes long, and it's about how cultures, they either push up against each other, embrace each other. And I mean, it sounds tough, but it's a comedy at its heart. And it's about how our ancestors and our ancestry haunts us as well. And so my work from growing up overseas and being a third culture kid, it's all about, and the podcast, bringing people in, having these difficult conversations or illuminating conversations, and helping them hopefully to open their eyes to being able to witness, what's going on in this world.
Yeah. So real quick, you said that they're not really for everyone. And I don't know, like I feel like they should be for everyone. Like maybe if every single person sat down and just like took 10 minutes out of their time and read it from a different perspective, because that's what you're doing. You're bringing these real world issues to light, and you're showing people, look, this is what's really going on, but you're doing it in like a not necessarily cutesy way, but a way that it is understandable to everybody, I feel like. So I think that it would be good if everybody could just take a couple minutes and just kind of see the underlining message that's going on in all your animations. And then maybe they could actually be like, oh, hey, wake up. I get what you're saying. The whole woke thing is kind of ugly or whatever. They make it out to be that it's ugly. But the reality of it is, if more people actually woke up to what was going on and we all kind of put a little bit more effort into it, things could be a lot different, and there wouldn't be so many issues in the world that we're facing right now. But, that's a whole other conversation for a whole nother day. Who knows if we'll ever get to that point, but fingers crossed we do. Yeah. Wow. So how do you stay inspired and motivated to keep working on all these projects? 'Cause I feel like you're putting a lot of heart and soul and passion into it. So it's got to be draining, right?
Well, yes, frankly. But you have to know that like my muse, that's what I call them, or muses are incredible nags. And so like I don't have a choice. My experience with these ideas or whatever is that something literally like a monkey comes on my back. And, you know, for example, when I was writing Poncho in the car, nobody will come to his restaurant, so he has to sell used cars on the side. So that's where that title comes in. So basically, you know, for example, I would get up one morning and, you know, make coffee, have some coffee and be sitting on the couch. And all of a sudden this thought would be like, okay, it's time to write Poncho, another episode. And I'd be like, no, I don't, I'm pretty happy being a slug. And it's like, no, it's time. And I mean, the pressure would build and build.
Okay.
And then
I get that.
Sit down and like maybe 2.5 episodes come out in an hour. And they're like fully formed, don't need really much editing. But my process is to let my unconscious do the work. So for example, I'm doing a comic book right now and, you know, I need to flesh out the world and do some more world building. And so what I do is I say, all right, I need some ideas to make this world more diverse, to make it more complicated, to make it more beautiful. And then I let it go. I drop it because I know my brain and whatever it is working on it in the background and I go about my life. But then there will come a moment where it's like, all right, it's done. We need to download this now, like get it down. And so whether it's on a hike with the dog or it's doing something else, I grab my phone, I put the idea in, and then I know I can go back to it later. So, you know, I wish that I was actually disciplined. I'm not. It's just one of these things where the muse comes in and says, stop being a jerk, sit down and get this out. And I'm like, I get really grumpy and I complain a lot. And they're like, this one's a stinker over here, but at least she gets it done.
I'm laughing because I'm the exact same way. Like, there's times where I'm just like, oh, I just don't care. I don't have the energy. I don't have the brain capacity, you know, all of that. And I just want to sit on the couch. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, you need to find people for your podcast, or you need to do social media, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. And it's more of like, I feel like I'm letting people down if I'm not doing it. Even though I might not have a lot of followers, it just feels like, you know, like I'm not giving my all. So that's usually the motivation behind it. I'm like, okay, fine, get up, do what you need to get done. Because then it's just like, it keeps nagging and nagging and nagging. Yeah. I'm like, I just don't want to think about it anymore. So I get it done. It'll be done. Think about it. We're good. So yeah, I totally relate to that. So let's talk about your podcast. I'm super excited about this. Byte Sized Blessings is what it's called. What all do you talk about on that? I know you talk about real world issues and that sort of thing. Tell us about that.
Oh gosh, we don't talk about real world issues.
Oh, just kidding. Just kidding. We don't talk about that.
Well, you know, it came out of the pandemic when everybody was so isolated, and I avoid real world issues like the plague because I feel
just kidding.
They're totally in my life anyway. And the podcast is meant to remind people and ground them in the idea that this world is a beautiful place. It's intentional. And that it only has our best interests at heart. And so basically emerged out of the pandemic, everyone was feeling lonely and depressed. And I thought, why, you know, people normally come to me and tell me these bizarre stories. And they're like, can you explain this to me? And I'm like, of course not. But I thought, I love those stories. And so I put a call out to my cohort from seminary and I said, hey, you guys, would any of you want to come on my podcast and tell a story about something magical, mysterious, or miraculous that happened in your life that you can't explain? And so, you know, I have either the long form interview where you can hear the whole interview, or I have the little bite sized, which is just the incident, the magical or miraculous incident. And Byte Sized Blessings, it's BYTE. It's an homage to my love of science because I kind of like every episode is a unit of information, like a byte. And I've had stories of, I mean, you look, it's also an incredibly selfish endeavor. I'm just going to put that out there because I need these stories. I need to hear how other people create meaning, these encounters they have with things that are bonkers and make no sense. You know, I've had stories of someone who died 3 times and what happened on the other side.
Oh my goodness.
A group of kids who got lost in the woods from youth group, and the woman who's a pastor now, a Methodist pastor, they were 14. She saw this vision when they were praying at this juncture of all these trails, and it said pointed and led to the trail, and they'd actually crossed state lines, and were like 13 miles away from where they were supposed to be, but they found them. Someone came along this really remote road and they said, I normally don't drive this road, but today it was like, I've got to drive this road, picked them up and took them back. I've had stories of, my God, one of my most powerful was Miss Drag, New Mexico. I think it was 2022, Tomahawk Martini, who describes herself as a native taco because she's Hispanic and indigenous. And Tomahawk's story, when Tomahawk was a kid, her grandparents, Tomahawk's grandfather was a medicine man for their people, and their grandmother helped the grandfather. And one day they stopped by late one night and were talking to Tomahawk's father. Tomahawk was about 7 or 8 at this time, didn't really understand what was going on. Also, Tomahawk had been having some dreams about dying around that time. And a week later, both of Tomahawk's, the grandparents did a ceremony with Tomahawk's dad, and then they left, gave a big hug to Tomahawk, and then they left. And a week later, both of them were killed in a car crash on a remote road. And basically, Tomahawk's father said that the grandmother had seen that Tomahawk was going to die, and so came over to do a ceremony to take on Tomahawk's death, knowing that they would die. They didn't know when, but they did that. They bartered and made that decision. And then a week later, they were killed. And so Tomahawk was spared. So I have had, you want to talk about stories that give you goosebumps?
Yes, that one just did, by the way.
Yes, they are incredibly potent and powerful reminders that there is a lot more going on in this thing that we call reality. And that there are things behind the scenes, we call them supernormal events, supernatural, but I think someday in science, we will get far enough to where we understand, no, it's just a natural process and it's part and parcel of what's going on. We just don't have the language yet. But it also indicates to me that there are forces or energies or what have you that are sentient and that have our backs and are all urging us to be our best selves and to help each other.
Wow, that's crazy. That's super deep. But yeah, that's I've always been one of those people that have kind of have had my faith in like fate, everything happens for a reason. We're on this like path that we're supposed to take in life. We may deviate from it here and there just because we make the wrong decision, but we always end up back on that path, and that's kind of the way things are going to go. So I will be honest, that's how I make a lot of my decisions. A lot of times I'm just like, throw it out there, see what happens. And like with this cat, my most recent cat that I just adopted, I literally saw a picture of him and was like, oh my God, he's the cutest little thing. I don't really need another cat. We'll see how it goes. Filled out the application. I probably won't get accepted. No big deal. 2 days later, they called me and they're like, hey. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess he was meant to be a part of my family then, So I've always been very much reliant on that sort of thing. And there has to be, like another plane or whatever it is. But there's people out there that are taking care of us. They're making sure that we stay on that path, that we're making the right decisions and all of that. I don't really know if that's like a religious type of thought process or what that is. But I definitely believe that there is, fate and we're here for a reason. We're meant to do certain things in our lives. And there's things that will take us to that path. Just takes some of us a little bit longer to get on it than we're supposed to. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes to all that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to look at things. And I don't know, but that's just how I've always, my husband gets a little frustrated. Sometimes he's like, oh, here we go. Let's see what faith has in store for us today. I'm like, yeah, just what happens. So how do you integrate that, like your belief in magic and miracles and all of that stuff? Like, how do you keep that separated from like your animations and real world issues? Because I feel like that's two completely opposite sides of the spectrum. Like, one where you're diving in real deep and kind of getting, personal and that sort of thing. And then the other one where you're kind of like exploring a different realm, so to speak. How do you keep that?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. Thank you. Yeah. That's actually a really interesting question because they're not separate.
Okay.
So I kind of walk through my day or walk through my life with the understanding that, so I always imagine a fish in water, right? The fish does not know that the fish is in water. It's its environment. It is.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And so for me, I am walking through this kind of energy or this world. You could call them waves. You could call them just, Star Wars fans call them midichlorians or whatever.
Okay.
Like, where is this, it is all around me. It is inside me. It is ever present and it's everywhere. And I am just walking through it. Scientists could call it the Higgs field. Like, who knows at this point? But it is always there and it's ever present. And so my creative works are part and parcel. That is what is emerging out of my collaboration with this field that is all around me.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, whether someone is a scientist, let's say chemistry professor or something, that is how that person is using their connection with that field. That's what's emerging out of them. And so every single person is having a different experience or a different, let's say, collaboration or connection with what is all around and kind of, I don't know, I call it shimmering in the background, we're all walking through this shimmering and the shimmering kind of comes out in all sorts of different ways, as is evidenced by you, by my dear friends, by the kitten that you adopted or the cat that you adopted.
Right.
All coming out in these different ways. And for me, it just has come out in a way where I'm a nomad. I look at it as co-creation. Like I am co-creating with whatever this is. And so whatever, that nag or that muse is actually the shimmering saying, hey, here's this project. Here's this thing we need out because it's a message. This podcast, because let me tell you something about the podcast, okay? This is actually really fascinating. And I practiced it over and over again. Not practiced, but let's say tested it because I'm kind of a jerk. As you know, putting a podcast out is exhausting and it's a lot of
so hard. It's so hard.
Yes. And so sometimes I release 2 a week. And, this is in the midst of not having a home, taking care of my mother, which is a whole other level of caregiving. It's been utterly exhausting. But every time I say out loud to the universe, because usually I'm kvetching out loud, I'm like, I'm going to quit. I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I don't know why I'm doing this. Someone within 24 hours, whether it's a stranger or a friend, will message me and say, that podcast changed my life. That podcast was so powerful. And so one day I was feeling especially jerky and I was feeling especially sorry for myself. So I was driving to work. This is a couple years ago. And I was just angry because I was exhausted with the podcast and everything else that was going on. And I'm driving and I'm grumping and I'm like, I'm sure people in other cars were like, what's going on in that car? And I was like, I'm going to give up. I'm like, done. I can't, this is stupid. I can't believe you want me to do this. Like, what is the point? Where is this going? You guys are jerks. I don't know who you are, but you're jerks. And I hate everything about this. But guess what? Jerks. I bet because you think you're so funny that within 24 hours, someone's going to message me and say, I love your podcast. And it's the best. All right. I bet that's going to happen because you all think you're so funny and whatever. And apparently I'm not supposed to give this up for some reason. Go to work. I'm at work. 4 hours later, a dear friend in Chicago texted me and said, oh my God, this episode this week, I can't even tell you how it changed my life. It was so beautiful. I needed that message this week. It's so timely. It's so perfect. And I just started laughing and I was like, who's the jerk now? It's me. I'm a jerk. I know I'm a jerk, but yes. All right. Message noted, universe. Okay, I'll stop complaining. But of course I haven't stopped complaining. I feel like, every once in a while you just got to get it out.
Yep. No, I'm the exact same way. And it is so exhausting. So right now we're in the process of moving. So, and everybody knows what comes along with that. Like, you got to get your house ready. You got to make sure it's pretty. You got to make sure it's clean. You got to show it to all these people and let them all come in and judge your house and how you live and all of that. And then on top of that, you also have to find the perfect house somewhere else. So it's exhausting. And then we're doing the podcast. And then we've got, like, I'm not going to lie to you, Life, Love, and Travel has kind of been on the back burner. And it sucks. And I feel terrible about it. But sometimes you just, like, you can only give so much, right? Like, your cup has to be full in order for you to be able to fill others. And mine has just been empty. just totally empty. So I totally get what you're saying. Yeah. So there has been times where I'm just like, why am I even doing this? Is anybody even listening? And then I get on, my platform and I look at it and people are like, oh, this is so great. And you're just like, holy cow, like this is actually a thing. People actually like you. You're like Sally Field. People like me. Exactly.
I love this.
Sorry,
that
would age me a little bit, but yeah. You know what I mean. That's funny. Okay, so wow, this has been a great conversation. I know one thing we didn't talk about at all was beaches, and so I should probably bring that up. What's your favorite beach that you've been to?
Oh my gosh. So my favorite beach that I've been to is in Oregon.
Okay.
And so part of it is only because when you're come out from Portland and you're near Cannon Beach and you're driving south on 101, you go over Neocani Mountain and there's a viewpoint that you can stop at. So you can park there and it's on this mountain. The mountain is like a sheer cliff down to the sea. So the sea's right there, but you can look down on Manzanita and the beach there. And the beach at Manzanita goes on and on and on. And what's spectacular about it is it's really rugged. It has these giant rocks out in the sea, but also, or not even rocks. They're like, I don't know, mini islands, I guess you'd call them. But not only that, it is green and forested and lush. And it's just
sounds amazing.
Absolutely beautiful. Then when you drive down and you get on the beach, you can walk for miles. It just goes on and on and on. And it is so beautiful. And it's a different kind of beauty, right? Because it's not about the sun coming down on you at 90 degrees. It's not about getting a tan. It's about how gorgeous the greenery is because it's right there. There's just this incredible sense of potency and life and aliveness there because
they're talking
the
to each
ocean just butts up against the wildness of the woods and the forest. And I love that juxtaposition right there. Yeah.
Man, I've heard a lot of things of Oregon coast, but I've always been, I'm very much I need sun type person. So like we've gone to Seattle and we were there for a week and a half and I think we got one day where it was kind of sunny. So of course, I assume that whole area up there is kind of the same way. So I've kind of avoided it. But I've heard a lot of really nice things about it and how amazing it is up there. So I definitely need to explore up there one day.
We'll it's different. It's a different kind of world up there. It's I don't know. I mean, there's a reason a lot of people get seasonal affective disorder. It's cloudy a lot of the time, but inside that cloudiness, inside the fogs that roll off the ocean onto the beach, I have been on Manzanita Beach in a fog that was so thick, it was daytime. But I was down on the beach. I could not see anybody else. Like it was, even though people were close, it was like being in this other world. I could hear them. You could hear people walking, but you couldn't see anything. So it's a different kind of magic there on that beach.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a different kind of experience. And those towns are really precious and sometimes weird, but also magical.
Well, I like weird and magical. Yeah. That's what makes the world fun, I think.
True story.
Anyways.
True story.
Awesome. Okay, well, awesome. So I usually give everybody a little bit of time to kind of plug their socials. So where can everybody find you?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so, go to my website, bytesizedblessings.com, and that's BYTE again, and you'll find everything about my podcast, my animated series, my books, also a little bit about me, so you can kind of get to know who I am. But, please, I encourage you, reach out on Facebook, which I know, Facebook, it's an old person's.
I use it too. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. So Kirsten Rudberg. And then on Instagram, the best place to find me is Edison Sucks 1. And that's number 1 because I have a lifelong grudge against Thomas Edison that I can't quite seem to let go. And I will die on that hill forever.
I love it.
And then, I have my YouTube channel, Byte Sized Blessings, and Murder of Two. You can find a link to my animated series on my website. Yeah, all those places. Yeah.
Awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, so she's everywhere, y'all. So make sure that you go and do all the followings and all the things. So real quick, Kirsten, my final question that I ask everybody, what does paradise mean to you?
Oh my gosh, everyone getting along.
Yes.
And
that's beautiful.
Inviting everyone to the table and giving them space to feel like they belong, that what they say and what they want to contribute matters, and that, honestly, and I mean everything from a tree to an insect to a human being to this planet, like, we're all in this together and we got to figure it out. We have to figure it out.
Yes. Cohesiveness, I feel like, would be the ultimate paradise. That's a beautiful thought for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time. This was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun. And I will definitely keep in touch. And we'll talk to you soon.
Hooray. Good one. So excited. You too. Thank you.
Hey there, beach lovers. That's it for today's episode of Beachside Banter with Bee. I sure hope you had as much fun as I did. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. You can catch me on all social media platforms at Life, Love, and Travel. And if you've got a question or you just want to stop by and say hi, feel free to slide into my DMs and I'll make sure to get those answered for you. Big thanks to everyone who joined me today and for all of you tuned in. And until next time, enjoy your week.